I knew something was rotten the moment they served champagne with "minimalism is excellence" etched into the crystal. The lakeside resort in Colorado looked like a Netflix set piece, and our CEO resembled an influencer cosplaying as a leader. They called it a Leadership Strategy Renewal Conference, but it was really an execution by PowerPoint and practice smiles. My name is Rachel Monroe. At 38, I'd built my career on one simple principle: data doesn't lie. But the people interpreting it often do. As Director of Strategic Development at Quantexa Nexus, I'd helped grow the company's revenue by tens of millions through optimized data analytics strategies. I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional. Which is probably why what happened next caught me so completely off guard. The morning mist was still clinging to Mirror Lake when Trevor Granger, our CEO, took the stage. He wore his signature black turtleneck and jeans combo. A Steve Jobs wannabe who'd read too many leadership books and internalized none of them. The 100-plus employees gathered in the conference hall clutched their artisanal coffee and waited for the usual corporate gospel. Innovation requires sacrifice, Trevor began, his voice echoing through the vaulted wooden ceiling. And sometimes, that sacrifice means letting go of what no longer serves our vision. I should have seen it coming when his eyes found mine in the crowd, but I was still riding high on the success of our latest product launch, a predictive analytics tool I'd spearheaded that was already generating seven-figure contracts. "Rachel Monroe," he said, and the room turned to look at me. "Would you join me on stage?" The walk to that podium felt like a mile. My heels clicked against the polished floor, each step echoing in the sudden silence. I thought maybe this was recognition. Finally, maybe they were announcing my promotion to Senior Vice President, the position I'd been promised 6 months ago. "Rachel has been with us for 8 years. Trevor continued, his smile never wavering. "She's contributed significantly to our growth, but as we pivot toward a leaner, more agile structure, we must make difficult decisions." The words hit me like ice water. Pivot, lean, agile. Corporate speak for "you're fired." Effective immediately, Rachel's position is being eliminated as part of our strategic restructuring. The room erupted in confused murmurs. My direct reports looked stricken. Even some of the C-suite executives seemed surprised, but not Trevor. He maintained that practiced smile as security appeared at my elbow. "Your personal items will be shipped to you," he said quietly, the microphone now off. "Thank you for your service." They escorted me out like a criminal, past my stunned colleagues, through the lobby where we'd laughed over drinks the night before, out into the Colorado morning where my rental car was already packed with my conference materials. The security guard watched me drive away, making sure I didn't circle back. My phone buzzed before I'd even reached the main road. A text from an unknown number. "You free time to burn it all down. Gareth." Gareth Lowell, the company's largest shareholder and the only board member who'd ever looked me in the eye during presentations. I'd always suspected he saw through Trevor's smoke and mirrors. Now I was about to find out how much. The GPS led me to a cabin 20 miles north, tucked into the mountains like a secret. Gareth was waiting on the porch, looking nothing like the polished investor I knew from board meetings. Flannel shirt, worn jeans, work boots, real clothes for a real conversation. "Coffee," he offered, leading me inside. "I'd prefer answers." He smiled. "That's why I always liked you, Rachel. Straight to the point." The cabin was sparse but comfortable. We sat at a wooden table scarred by years of use, and Gareth laid out a folder thick with documents. "Trevor's planning to sell Quantexa Nexus to a European conglomerate," he began. "But the company's not worth what he's claiming, so he's been cooking the books." "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation when I have proof." He slid a document across the table. "Recognize this?" My blood ran cold. It was a financial projection report bearing my digital signature, claiming our newest product line, Heliograph, had generated $12 million in revenue last quarter. There was just one problem. "Heliograph doesn't exist," I whispered. "No, it doesn't. But according to these documents you supposedly signed, it's our fastest growing product." "I never signed these." "I know. But Trevor's been using your reputation and signature to legitimize false data. When the deal goes through and the fraud is discovered, guess who takes the fall? The scope of his betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not only had he fired me publicly, humiliated me in front of our entire team, but he'd also set me up as the scapegoat for his corporate fraud. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I'm tired of watching him destroy good people, and because I need someone who knows the company's actual numbers to help me stop him. I'm not interested in being anyone's instrument of revenge. Gareth leaned back, studying me. This isn't about revenge, Rachel. It's about justice. There's a difference. He was right, of course. But sitting in that cabin, my career in ashes, my reputation about to be destroyed. The line between justice and revenge seemed pretty thin. What did you have in mind? I heard myself asking. That's when Gareth smiled. Really smiled. For the first time since I'd arrived, we're going to create a company, a shell corporation called Cortex Axis, specializing in acquiring data analytics platforms, and then we're going to let Trevor hang himself with his own lies. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. We'd approach Trevor as potential buyers, get him on record inflating numbers and confirming the existence of phantom products. Every lie would be documented, every false claim recorded. He'll never fall for it, I said. He knows me too well. He won't be meeting you. You'll be behind the scenes, feeding questions to our CEO. Trevor's ego won't let him pass up a buyer willing to pay his inflated price. Over the next 3 days, while my former colleagues finished their leadership conference, Gareth and I built Cortex Axis from scratch. Website, LinkedIn profiles, fake employees with stock photos and generated backgrounds. It was easier than it should have been to create a convincing corporate facade. The Zoom call was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Trevor took the bait immediately, eager to showcase Quantexa Nexus to potential buyers. I sat off camera, feeding questions through chat to James Hartley, an actor Gareth had hired to play our CEO. Tell me about Heliograph, James said, reading my prompt. The numbers look impressive. Trevor's face lit up on screen. Our flagship predictive analytics platform, $12 million in revenue last quarter alone, with a 40% quarter-over-quarter growth rate. I typed furiously, ask about the client base. How many active enterprise clients? Over 200, Trevor lied smoothly, including 3 Fortune 500 companies I can't name due to NDAs. Every word was being recorded, every false claim documented. But I needed more. I needed him to explicitly state that the financial documents were accurate. Our due diligence team has reviewed the financial statements signed by your Director of Strategic Development. James continued, reading my words. Can you confirm these numbers? Absolutely. Rachel Monroe personally oversaw all our product development and revenue reporting. Her signature validates every projection. There it was, on record, using my name to legitimize his fraud. Interesting, James said, because we heard she was recently let go. Trevor's smile tightened. A strategic restructuring, her work was completed and we're moving in a new direction, but all documentation from her tenure is accurate and verified. The call continued for another hour. Trevor painted a picture of a company worth 5 times its actual value, with products that existed only in falsified reports and customers who'd never signed contracts. By the end, we had enough evidence to bury him. But I wasn't satisfied with just taking down Trevor. He was a symptom of a larger disease at Quantexa Nexus. The entire executive team had to know about the fraud. They'd sat in meetings where phantom revenue was discussed, signed off on reports for products that didn't exist. We need more, I told Gareth after the call ended. What did you have in mind? I want to talk to everyone Trevor's pushed out over the last 2 years. If he did this to me, he's done it to others. The next week became a reunion of the professionally wronged Sarah Hendricks, former head of product development, met me at a coffee shop in Denver. She'd been fired 6 months ago for cultural misalignment after questioning discrepancies in user metrics. I knew something was off, she said, sliding a USB drive across the table. I kept copies of everything, original reports before Trevor's revisions. Marcus Webb, a senior engineer let go for being too rigid in his thinking, had similar stories. He asked me to code fake user sessions into our analytics dashboard. When I refused, I was gone within a week. Each person I met painted the same picture: a culture of deception enforced through termination. Those who questioned the narrative were systematically removed, their reputations subtly tarnished to prevent them from speaking out. But the most valuable ally came from inside the company. Maggie Chen, my former assistant, reached out through an encrypted message app. "I can't stand what they did to you," she wrote. "I'm still here, and I want to help." Maggie became our inside source, carefully documenting the ongoing fraud. She photographed whiteboards showing inflated projections, recorded hallway conversations about managing the narrative, and most importantly, she accessed Trevor's email history, showing explicit instructions to falsify data. One email particularly stood out, sent to the CFO. "Rachel's getting too close to the heliograph situation. Need to move on her before she figures it out. Make it about performance, not numbers." So my firing wasn't just about restructuring. It was about silencing me before I discovered the fraud that now bore my forged signature. 3 weeks after my lakeside humiliation, we had assembled what I called the truth file. 500 pages of evidence documenting systematic fraud, forged signatures, and fictional products. It was time to present it to the board. Gareth arranged an emergency board meeting, using his influence as the largest shareholder. Trevor tried to block it, claiming it was an attempted hostile takeover. But the other board members were curious enough to attend. The conference room at Quantexa Nexus headquarters hadn't changed since I'd last presented there. The same long mahogany table, the same oil paintings of mountain landscapes, the same smell of leather and ambition. But this time, I wasn't there to pitch a product or defend a budget. I was there to destroy the man who'd tried to destroy me. Trevor entered last, his usual confidence intact. He'd prepared a counter-presentation, no doubt full of charts showing why Gareth was wrong and everything was fine. "Gareth, I appreciate your concerns," he began, not even acknowledging my presence. "But I assure you, our financials are rock solid." "Are they?" Gareth asked. "Then you won't mind explaining this." The screen lit up with the Zoom recording. Trevor's voice filled the room, confidently lying about heliograph, about revenue, about customers that didn't exist. The board members shifted uncomfortably as their CEO wove a tapestry of deception for potential buyers. "That was taken out of context," Trevor said when the recording ended. "Sales conversations often involve optimistic projections." Optimistic projections. I stood speaking for the first time. "Is that what you call forging my signature on fraudulent documents?" I opened the truth file, distributing copies to each board member. Page 47 shows the original revenue report I submitted. Page 48 shows the version Trevor filed with the SEC, bearing my forged signature and inflated by 300%. The room erupted. Board members flipped through pages, their expressions shifting from skepticism to alarm. The CFO tried to leave, but Gareth blocked the door. "Page 112, I continued, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "An email from Trevor instructing the CFO to make the heliograph numbers work using my sign-off authority." Page 230, whiteboard photos showing the real revenue next to the reported revenue. Page 305, testimony from 8 former employees confirming they were terminated for questioning these practices. Trevor's face had gone from tan to pale to a concerning shade of gray. "This is corporate espionage. She's bitter about being restructured." Page 401, I interrupted. "An email where you explicitly state I was getting too close to the heliograph situation and needed to be removed before I discovered the truth." Silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket. Board members looked at Trevor, then at each other, the weight of their oversight failure visible on their faces. "I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in our CEO," Gareth said. "Seconded," came from across the table. The vote was unanimous. 12 hands raised, 12 careers acknowledging they'd been deceived. Trevor didn't wait for security. He grabbed his laptop and left. His departure, as undignified as mine, had been 3 weeks earlier. But we weren't done. The CFO, CMO, and two other executives complicit in the fraud faced similar votes. By the end of the day, Quantexa Nexus had lost its entire C-suite. "We need you to come back," the board chair said as the room emptied. "As interim CEO, help us clean this up." "No," I said simply. "I've done my part." The media storm hit the next day. Natalie Cross, an investigative journalist at the Atlantic Ledger who I'd met through Sarah Hendricks, published a devastating exposé, Empire of Illusion: How Quantexa Nexus Built a Billion-Dollar Lie. The article detailed everything: the phantom products, the forged signatures, the systematic termination of whistleblowers. My name appeared as the executive who'd exposed the fraud, not as its perpetrator. The SEC launched an immediate investigation. Trading was halted. The stock price, when markets reopened, dropped 60% in a single day. The European conglomerate withdrew their offer, citing material misrepresentation. Trevor tried one last desperate move. He called a press conference, claiming he was the victim of a coordinated attack by a disgruntled former employee and a rogue shareholder. He painted me as emotional, vindictive, unable to accept the natural evolution of corporate leadership. It might have worked, except for one thing: metadata doesn't lie. Every forged document contained digital fingerprints showing when it was created, by whom, and on which computer. The forensic analysis was damning. Each falsified report traced back to Trevor's laptop, created after hours when he thought no one was watching. The FBI arrested him 2 weeks later on charges of securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The image of him being led away in handcuffs made the front page of the Wall Street Journal. The headline read, "Quantexa Nexus, CEO Arrested in Massive Fraud Scheme." I watched from my apartment, feeling neither joy nor satisfaction, just a hollow sense of completion. Maggie visited me the day after Trevor's arrest, carrying a box of my personal items from the office. "These were in your desk," she said. "I thought you might want them." Inside were the usual detritus of corporate life-branded pens, a coffee mug with a motivational quote, photos from company parties. But at the bottom was a USB drive I didn't recognize. "What's this?" Maggie smiled. "I found it in Trevor's office. Thought you should see it before anyone else." I plugged it into my laptop. The drive contained email threads going back 3 years, detailing a systematic plan to remove my name from 3 analytics tools I developed and patent them under Trevor's name instead. He hadn't just wanted me gone. He'd wanted to erase my contributions entirely. But there was more. Correspondence with headhunters about my emotional instability and difficulty working with male leadership. He'd been poisoning my reputation long before the public firing, ensuring I'd struggle to find equivalent work elsewhere. "Are you going to release this?" Maggie asked. I stared at the screen, at the evidence of a vendetta I'd never known existed. Part of me wanted to send it all to Natalie Cross, to twist the knife one final time. But what would be the point? Trevor was finished. The company was under federal investigation. My reputation had been restored. "No," I said finally, ejecting the drive. "We're done here." Maggie looked surprised. "After everything he tried to do to you." "We didn't do this for revenge," I said, echoing Gareth's words from that first day in the cabin. "We did it for justice, and we got it." 6 months later, Quantexa Nexus emerged from bankruptcy under new leadership. The board had hired a CEO with a reputation for transparency and ethical governance. They'd even reached out to me about consulting on rebuilding their analytics division. I politely declined. I started my own firm instead, specializing in forensic data analysis for companies suspecting internal fraud. It turns out there's a robust market for someone who can spot cooked books and phantom products. My first client came through Gareth, but word spread quickly. Within a year, I had more work than I could handle. The last time I saw Trevor was at his sentencing hearing, 7 years for securities fraud, with millions in fines and restitution. He looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit, the corporate swagger replaced by the shuffling gait of a broken man. Our eyes met briefly across the courtroom. I expected to see hatred, maybe defiance. Instead, I saw something worse: recognition. He knew, finally, that his downfall hadn't been about my emotions or vindictiveness. It had been about his own arrogance, his belief that he could build an empire on lies and use good people as stepping stones. As I left the courthouse, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Another whistleblower at another company, asking for help exposing their own Trevor. I smiled, thinking of that USB drive still sitting in my desk drawer. Unused, but not forgotten. We don't need revenge when we have the truth. And the truth, as I learned that day by Mirror Lake, always finds a way to surface. Sometimes it just needs a little help.